Get the recording started. And tonight I wanted to talk about stress management, but before I do, let me these are some of the assessments who Tim, you asked me about these. Some of these are slightly different in the My Lab. You might want to do both of them. I would actually advise if you had to maybe take both of them. The Big Five personality, that Hexaco I mentioned there, that's a Canadian. There's a lot of Canadian researchers doing work on that. And that adds, when you talk about the Big Five personality, all the psychologists, everyone knows what it is, but they think there's a sixth trait that should be measured. They call it a Big Six. And the trait they're measuring, they do have done a lot of research on, is the trait of humility, which in many ways I think is a pretty big one when it comes to leadership. So these are some of the ones from chapter 1, and then some of the assessments on chapter 2. Some of them were in the textbook, like the type A personality. I think the type A, the one I gave you, is a little better than the one in my lab, because it looks at 4 different areas of type A. I'll talk about that tonight. There's a survey I found called the procrastinator survey that in other classes students seem to like. And then that job burnout survey is one that we've developed, which you take in self-score. That's in one of the handouts. And then the social readjustment rating scales in the textbook. So I'll talk a little bit about some of those tonight. Just quickly, I'd like to run through and highlight some things on stress. And one of the reasons I like to talk about stress is how important I think it is to effective management, your effectiveness as a leader or manager. And then I want to talk a little bit about mindfulness. Some of you may be familiar with mindfulness if you do yoga, or there's a lot of people getting training and discussion around mindfulness, trying to and it's really related to emotional intelligence, etc. So I thought I'd spend just a few minutes talking about the basics of it. But I don't think we think often enough about the physiological consequences of stress. And a lot of heart disease, risks of colds and viral infections. Stress, added stress adds to a lot of our lack of productivity in the American workforce. And I think as you move in your careers, this is it's funny to talk about this as a leadership management skill, but I do think it's a pretty important one. And I think there's ways we can then begin to look at stress. In some ways, what we're trying to do in this course in each of these areas that we talk about is give you a framework for looking at these skills that we're talking about, and a framework where you can analyze and then get in to do something about. And I think first, a good starting point is if you're experiencing stress in your life, I think it's pretty important to identify where it comes from. And a lot of that stress, and I'll talk about these 4 areas, they're the stressors. And then your stressors can have impacts on you psychologically or physiologically. And then, so how do you then develop, how do you either eliminate, in terms of managing stress, how do you eliminate your stressors, or how do you develop resiliency? So that's kind of the whole thought process here. And being able, giving you a model for kind of attacking at this. So enactive strategies are trying to eliminate stressors. Proactive strategies are how do you develop resiliency to the different stressors? And then reactive are really what are short-term things you can do when stress just hits. In talking about stress a little bit, one of the most important, and as I'm going through these, think about yourself in terms of where are your current stressors coming from? A big area is time stressors, and it's basically too much to do in too little time. You really are experiencing workload, or the other part of that is you may be lacking in any kind of control over your time. So how much autonomy do you have? Time stressors. Another one is, whoops, sorry about that. Another one are encounter stressors. These are stressors with other people, role conflicts. You're relying on other people to do your job, or you have disagreement about different things. That's issue conflicts. The ones that are the most difficult are the interpersonal conflicts, the mutual antagonism. And these, I think, sometimes are some of the most debilitating in a job, especially if your encounter stressor is with a boss or bosses. The next area are situational stressors. This happens, you might be in a time of rapid change, or you might be having some unfavorable work conditions. There's a lot going on in work. You maybe have to be all over the place to get your job done. But most commonly, rapid change. Maybe your company's going through a merger with another company. And this rapid change increases anxiety. These are all situational stressors that might be related to just the job you're doing. And then finally, these are anticipatory stressors. You're worried about the future. These are things happening down the line that you sit and worry about. Usually fear, anxiety come into play here. And these can at times be debilitating. Maybe you have a big project that is just stressing you out that's due in a couple months. And so I think if you're experiencing stress in your life, where does it fit? For yourself, if you want to just take a minute and see where the class is, what kinds of stressors are you encountering out there? Is there one you would identify, or one or two in your job?
We just went through some downsizing at my job, so that's never fun.
So there's a lot of fear and anxiety that comes with it, and you don't have any control over it, do you?
No.
So kind of being out of control in that situation. Any other stressors? How about anyone feeling time stressors?
Yeah, for me, it's a lot of time stressors. So a lot of get stuff done this day, today, by end of week, big projects. I'm in logistics and shipping and transportation, so managing to get all that amount of capacity in there in such a short amount of time. That's probably my biggest stressor at work.
Okay, and time is a big one. Joe mentioned difficult clients. It can be a stressor. I don't know if I need to say more. One of the jobs that, what do they call, they're emotional burdens. I'm trying to think of the expression used when you have a job when you got to be nice to people that you don't want to be nice to. That brings a lot of emotional pain. Any other stressors people feel you're going through?
Not currently, but in my previous job as a mortgage processor, every day was just stressful. It was a lot of deadlines, a lot of timelines, talking to customers that wanted to be bothered and didn't want it to be bothered. They just wanted their loan to go through. So it's a lot of anxiety and stress that came with my previous job, which is one of the reasons why I got out of it.
It sounds like there could be three kinds of stressors going on there: encounter stressor, time stressor, and anticipatory.
Yeah, it was a lot.
I think it's important, and I put some attention to this. I think it's important when you're experiencing stress to kind of identify where's it coming from. And if you can identify where it's coming from, then you can identify maybe some strategies. So if time is a stressor, if you eliminate it, maybe you need to work on time management, maybe more efficient time management. Maybe you need to think about, am I delegating all the work I could do? If you have encounter stressors, maybe you should work on developing that emotional intelligence, or work on being in more collaborative in teams. Your situational stressor, Shamika, you might have had this. Maybe it sounded like you needed to redesign your work, but you did by leaving. And then anticipatory, if you have something in the future you're worried about, you might have to take a strategy of setting small steps. These are strategies to eliminate the stress. That one scale I gave you, I don't know if anyone took it, the social adjustment rating scale. It's at the beginning of this chapter. These are life events that bring you stress. This was developed by two heart cardiologists when they noticed people coming to them and getting illness and stress, what they thought stress-related illness. And they began to link life events happening. And if you take that scale, and a lot of times these are life events that could be positive or negative. Maybe you started a new job, you got a divorce, or someone died, or just any kind of life event like that. You bought a new house. All of these events bring stress, and if you circle all those and add up the score, I think there's a score of 150. They give you a scale on that if you score high in these life events, you might be in danger of becoming ill. There is a high relationship between some of having these life events and illness. I'm not saying you're going to get ill, but it's something to think about. But it might make you susceptible to illness. So that's why I have people take this event, this survey, and then I want to spend a little bit on the type A personality. I think this is real important. I think many of us are susceptible to this, type A as opposed to type B. Basically, if you took the one I gave you, it measures you on 4 different scales. And on those scales, you could have a score. Well, if you score above 12 on each of the scales, and the scales are impatience and urgency, competitiveness, over involvement in work, and hostility or anger. Those are the 4 scales it measures you on. And scores of 12 or above on any of those suggests a type A tendency. In America, type A personality is very common. You know, we have in our American culture the rugged individual, you know, me, myself, and I on my own can conquer the world. That's part of our American culture. We love heroes. We love the one person doing everything on their own. And so we probably live in a type A society. And it's very important, I think, to come to terms with this a little bit. And your type A personality certainly helps you, but studies have shown that type A behavior is related to heart disease, anxiety, and hurting relationships. The hostility one is the biggest risk factor, the anger and hostility. Type A personalities sometimes can create your own stress. You know, and a lot of your success might be to your type A behavior. But it can lead to stress. And I see a number of students in here who exhibit the type A. And I'm not saying, you know, that you're doomed. I'm just saying, and it's been responsible for a lot of your success. Learn how to manage it. You may tend to have a higher incidence of heart than type B. And a lot of times we think our type A behavior leads to our success. But type A personality plays a clear role in the extent to which we experience stress and how we cope with it. You know, so a lot of times when you move up into a managerial job and you've been a real high achiever, one of the things you have to learn how to do is delegate. And this is one of the issues to think about if you have this type of personality. How well am I at delegating things? Because no one can do it as good as you can. And that probably might be true. You know, kind of the one survey that I gave you, then the last one I'll talk about is that burnout survey. And if this is happening in your job right now, it measures you on 3 dimensions. And the 3 dimensions are emotional exhaustion. Basically, that's where you feel like you're at the end of your rope. You're emotionally worn out or overwhelmed. Those red numbers I have in parentheses, those are some averages for a couple classes I've had. So a couple classes I've had in are 25.3 to 25.7. Depersonalization, this is another element of burnout, is viewing other people in an impersonal way. You kind of see them as objects. You tend to distance yourself from other people. You want to go into a cave and kind of hide. And then another one is associated with this is potentially losing confidence in yourself. You kind of start to lose some self-confidence when you're feeling burned out. You know, nothing seems to be going right. I just can't get anything done. So I offer the burnout survey to kind of take a look at. And then I would ask you, you know, take a look. And if you look at the back of the chapter, I kind of like thinking about this. Where are you in your life balance between many of these activities? Are they in balance for you? Certainly work and now intellectual activities with school are going to throw this balance off a little bit. But is there an area, and I'm not saying these are all the areas that fit you. This is just one in the book, but I think it's important to kind of take a look at these things. And you know, it's one way to step back as you kind of look at this chapter. And this is an area, you know, when I tell you, you know, one of the areas, you know, you're looking at is picking a skill you might want to work on this semester. A lot of people pick something in the stress area or time management area. That video I gave you to watch I can't remember her name, with the TED Talk. That's good video talking about this concept. It's not events that cause stress, it's what people think of events that causes stress. Our cognitions, thoughts, and interpretations play a central role in stress. So what might be stressful for you is not stressful for me. This is that cognitive component. And that's why I want to talk about mindfulness a little bit. How to think about a mindful look at stress in your life. Developing resiliency, diet, cardiovascular kinds of things. Don't underestimate this. Psychological, relaxation, balanced lifestyle. A hearty personality, in where you join diet and exercise and sleep and all those kind of things. Watch the type A personality. If you're worried about the future, take small steps toward what you're worried about. Some of the social things you can do is get mentors. Work on your working in supportive teams or building supportive teams. Try to develop close emotional ties, work relationships. These are all things that help build some of that social stressors, that encounter stressors that we find. Basically, a hardy personality is one where you feel a little bit in control of your life. You're trying to get some control back. So you might be in stressful times, but if you can at least get some control over the stress in your life, you can bring control back. How do you get committed to what you're doing? Being in the flow and feeling challenged. These are all things that kind of give us a hearty feeling when we're at work. And just saying a few words about social resiliency. It's really important to devote the time to maintaining and developing friendships and family relationships and building your network of connections out there. Using a mentor, I can't tell you enough how in my own life, having a mentor out there that I could go to was so critical. And usually this is something that kind of happens when you're meeting people and you connect. But I would really recommend trying to find this in your work life. And then see what you can do about building cohesive teams. These are all increase that social resiliency that helps us with a number of those encounter stressors. Stephen Covey, the book, are you familiar with the book 7 Habits of Highly Successful People? It's a book that's probably been around 25, 30 years, but Stephen Covey wrote the book, and it's an excellent book, but he came up with the concept of the emotional bank account as a way to think about relationships. And basically, you want to make as many deposits as you can, and treating people with kindness, courtesy, respect, all those things, and to minimize the withdrawals. And basically, when we do that, when we come off track, people give us the benefit of the doubt. Encounter stressors can be greatly reduced by building strong emotional bank accounts with each other. I can't tell you the importance of that approach in life. And then EQ, a national survey find they like to work for bosses who are supportive and interpersonally competent. You want to be that kind of a boss. Why? There's lower levels of burnout, lower stress, lower incidence of stress-related illness, higher productivity, more loyalty, more efficiency. I can't tell you, and I know it may come up when we're here more, and maybe some of you are experiencing this, but the number of people who are going through stress because of their bosses and the lack of a good relationship with the boss, I think is one of the more debilitating things that I have found people facing. And it may reach the point where you have to kind of look to move on, but and I tell you this for when you get into this position, it's that the importance of being a supportive and boss that holds people accountable, but you can do that in a very good way. Adds a great deal to productivity and morale in the workplace. Another thing has to do with reframing. Maybe you're going through stress about something. How do you reframe the thought in your mind? This involves reducing stress by redefining the situation. You might say to yourself, hey, I've solved similar problems like this before. Wait a minute, there's other people who said they would help me get through this. In the long run, it's not that big a deal. In 100 years, who's it going to matter to? There are a lot of good approaches open to me. This can be a learning experience for me. How do you reframe the problem for yourself? And let me just stop for a minute. And see if you have any questions about what I've talked about or any thoughts anyone wants to share. Any thoughts anyone has? Am I depressing you with this discussion of stress? I don't mean to add to your stress here tonight. Any thoughts anyone has? Or questions?
I think it was interesting, just kind of like reading along and kind of on your point about the health effects of stress. Just being in a workplace and knowing people that work very high stress jobs like that physical impact is really it's real. And
Yeah.
as soon as a lot of these people that work high stress jobs retire, you'd think that would reduce the stress, but usually that's when the health effects start to kick in. So yeah, definitely trying to, going forward, trying to keep in mind, reducing stress level. And so far my company seems to be pretty accommodating to that.
Well, I know, that's a good point. I remember in my work life, boy, I would be burning the candle at both ends. Then all of a sudden vacation happens and I'm sick on the first day of vacation, or you get a break. And I think that's some of the stuff. Mark, did you have a question? I see you came invisible here.
No, yeah, I realized my camera's off, but no, yeah, I mean, I can add, it's good to kind of follow along. I have 4 direct reports at work right now, so a lot of this stuff is relatable in real time to me, in my work life. So, it's very interesting. Just the little things like, commending people for like the small wins. I think that's gone, a long way for me.
Yeah.
Throughout my time at my work.
Yeah, don't underestimate recognition.
Yeah.
And the chapter on communication has an excellent technique. It's called the PMI, personal management interview, which I really recommend for people. We'll talk more about it. Anyone else? I want to talk a little bit about time management. I can't remember. I think one of the handouts you might have is a time log, or you can see time logs. If time management's an issue for you, you might want to keep for a couple of weeks a time log for yourself. And how you and a 24-hour time log, not just when you're at work. How are we spending our time? But let me talk a little bit about time management. If you had to, actually, when you do the SSS software case, this might be a good tool for you to use. But anyway, think of all the tasks you have in your life that you face every day. Some of you might keep to-do lists. Think of them, and I mean, think of them in terms of this chart. And at one axis of this chart is the word urgency, and the other is importance. And issues that are high in urgency and high in importance, a crisis, a customer complaints, these are all things that bring a lot of stress, and you got to deal with them right away. But there are some things you face that are high in urgency but low in importance, like the mail, ringing telephones, people stopping by your office. There's a lot of things like that, sometimes called time wasters. Then there's other things, and some of those, if there's a lot of them on your list, you might want to see which ones can be eliminated or managed better. On the other end are things that are low in importance and low in urgency. These are, like talking out at the water cooler, escapes you go on, or routine things, and anything like that. These sometimes are time wasters. And then there is the dimension of things that are high in importance but low in urgency. These are the things, developmental opportunities, ability to do planning, long-term thinking, those projects that are due down the line. These are usually the most important things in your life and in your work life that are, and they're important because they're very important to you, but they're low in urgency. These are the things we tend to put off and don't have time for. And we get a lot of stress because we know we're not dealing with the important stuff. I have a little better chart on this that I'll share with you that are in the notes. But I kind of like this way to think about all the tasks you're facing. Put them on the urgency importance. Where do they fit on the urgency importance grid? And then depending on where they fit, you may decide to use your time more effectively. Now, there's a big distinction between using your time effectively and using your time efficiently. And I'll say more about that as we go along, but you want to make time for all those activities that are important, but not necessarily urgent. Don't always let others define what is urgent, and learn how to not feel guilty for saying no. If you say no, you don't need to feel guilty. So to have effective time management, you want to spend time on important matters that aren't necessarily urgent. You want to make time for that. You want to be able to distinguish between important versus urgent. Results rather than methods should be the focus of your time management, and find reasons for not feeling guilty. Efficient time management, it's how you use your time each day, what techniques. Most time management programs that you're involved in, many of where you work has time management webinars that you can take, or self-training courses. There are tons of great stuff out there on managing your time, but that's usually concerns itself with efficient time management. And there are things you can do to make yourself more efficient. But what I'm calling you to do is really look at effective time management. And that's what you want to get to. All those things that are important but not urgent. So, what do you stand for? What do you care about? What do you want to be remembered for in your job? What do I want to have accomplished in so many years, etc.? These are the kinds of questions you ask yourself in terms of what's important to you. So I throw this out a little bit on time management. The book is really excellent. with a number of excellent techniques that you can use to make your time management more efficient. The big question for you is the stuff that's important to you personally. Is that are you blocking and finding the time for that? So those are a lot of my thoughts on the stress and time management. And this very much is an area you might think about. That's what's important. I mean, each of you are going to hit this chapter differently, depending on, for some of you, this might be one of the most important chapters you think about this semester. And for others, you say, hey, I got this under control. So there's a lot here. And if you want to pick if you're saying, hey, I really need to work on this, after you take the assessment, you say, hey, I'm kind of burnt out and I'm kind of really stressed at work. Maybe this is a skill I should try and improve in the next few weeks. So, or if maybe it's time management is actually a way to deal with stress. That's why it's not a separate chapter on its own. I'm going to spend a few minutes. Basically, what I wanted to do tonight was just really highlight some stuff for you that I think is important. But I want to spend a little bit of time talking about mindfulness and a concept. It's cognitive behavior. You've heard of the expression cognitive behavioral therapy. This is I think DBI. It's dialectical behavioral therapy, DBI. You know, kind of is trying to get people away from dualistic thinking. And this is where we get in trouble when we have dualistic thinking, where we, you know, because I'm this way, you know, I'm better than you. Introverts are better than extroverts, or however we can't characterize that. Type A is better than type B, on and on and on. It's all that dualistic thinking and where we put evaluation and judgment on things. And this is what kind of causes the problems. And part of it is, how do you get out of the dualistic thinking? And the dualism that is talked about in mindfulness is between the rational and the emotional. And then, so how do you get to a mindful state? And let me just put some thoughts up here on that. The first one, and I made these available, is a concept called the triangle of awareness. Let me share that with you. All of these are trying to get you to come into the present moment, to bring, you know, a lot of our anxiety and fears are over future events that aren't here yet. And a lot of our regrets, angers, etc., are things that have happened already in the past. This, you know, when we talk about mindfulness, we're talking about bringing ourselves into the present moment, being mindful of what's happening now. And I like this concept. If you think about it for a minute, at any moment in time, you have thoughts, you have emotions, and you have physical sensations, your body. And if you step back and try and observe in the present moment, what are thoughts? How would you describe the emotion you have? What's happening in your body? I sometimes tell people that if they have to pause, if they're in a difficult encounter or whatever, pause and do this triangle of awareness. Bring yourself to the present moment, focus on yourself and say, okay, what thoughts are going through my head? What emotions how can I identify? And what's happening with my body? Just that process of pausing and bringing yourself into the present moment can really help dissipate situations you're in. So let me talk a little bit more about this. And is this turning up on your screen? Rational mind, emotion mind, did that turn up? The two circles?
No.
Okay. I gotta stop sharing, I don't know if you've ever tried to share stuff on Zoom. It's kind of crazy. All right, you see two blue circles?
Yeah, it's on there.
Basically, this is part of the mindfulness where the word comes from is we have a rational mind and an emotional mind. And where they're intersecting, the expression is wise mind. This is what we're trying to get to, a wise mind. But if you're at one end of the dialectic, the rational side, that's where the cold, the rational, task-focused part of our mind is. When in reasonable mind, you are ruled by facts, reason, logic, pragmatics. Values and feelings are not important. That's one end of the extreme. At the other end of the extreme is the emotional mind. It's hot. It's mood dependent. When in emotion mind, you are ruled by your moods, feelings, and urges to do and say things. Facts, reason, and logic are not important. So what you're trying to do is, move to that wise mind, the middle path, the wisdom within each person, seeing the value of both reason and emotion, bringing the left and the right together. And so how do you bring those together to get insight? And there's certain skills, what skills and how skills. So if you go to that triangle of awareness for a minute, the skill you want to have is observe. Can you just observe what's happening to you, your thoughts, your feelings, and your bodily reactions? How do you describe them? Could you put into words? My stomach is rumbling right now. I have these thoughts of not catching the plane on time, and my emotions are I'm really feeling frazzled. You can take a moment and describe, and then you try to become one with that experience, acting, practicing, accepting yourself in this situation, identifying. Those are what skills, and the other are how skills. So what you want to do is observe yourself non-judgmentally. Don't evaluate. Don't say I shouldn't or should be feeling this way. Only try and do one thing at a time. And keep focusing on what's working. And then when you try and describe, you're doing it non-judgmentally, open-mindedly, effectively, and then try and participate in what you're doing. Multitasking doesn't work, by the way. One thing at a time. We can only do one thing. That's what you're trying to bring yourself into the present moment to observe, describe, and participate in the moment as to what's happening. And then here are more, these are going to be available for you. But these are more, a better description, more of a description on what to do here with how skills and what skills. Trying to get at kind of this wise mind. This is the dialectical, where the word dialectical comes from. This is stuff that goes back to centuries, some of this thinking. A lot of Buddhist thinking and Eastern philosophies. But it's something, I don't know, any of you familiar or heard of the word mindfulness being used? Do you get mindfulness training at work? Anyone?
Yeah, my company does like a big thing of like mindfulness consulting. It's one of our offerings.
Okay. Anyone else? I would urge you to look into this. I mean, especially that triangle of awareness. I find when I'm really, really feeling stressed, or things are happening, or things are overwhelming, kind of the big word is pause. All of us can find time to pause. And then I say, okay, what's going on in my body? What thoughts are running through my head? What am I feeling right now? Just that act of doing that brings things into a much better perspective for me. And so I throw this out as we're on this chapter of stress, talking about things like reframing problems to begin to think about some of these issues. So I throw that out to you, and you might want to read more about it. There's a lot of good stuff out there on this mindfulness. And I've learned that late in life, much later. So we're always learning. All right, that's all I have for now. Do any of you have any questions about what's happening?
I had a quick question. Maybe I overlooked it. I was able to find the assignment, the job burnout, and the other survey. I didn't see the type A personality. Is it in the same area? I didn't see that one.
There, if you go to module 1, I think you'll
Okay.
see a tag that's called, let me see if I can find it. I'm not sure if I have my, okay. Okay, so if you go to the modules
Mm-hmm.
and you go to module 1, see this here, surveys and inventories?
Okay.
You click on that. Here are all the surveys. All you gotta do is click on them. You see them?
Yeah. Now, which one is for a type? Are you a procrastinator? Is that the type A one? I guess I was looking for it to say type A person.
Right here it is, type A personality.
Yeah, okay. I saw it. Okay. Thank you.
There's some control in the type A.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. All right, anything else? All right, so this weekend I really wanted the worksheet I gave you to turn in. What I'm really, that's probably, because I know there's a lot going on here. If you see the worksheet and you said, oh, here's what I forgot to do, at least you know all the different kinds of things. But that worksheet is real important when you start to sit down and analyze your strengths, weaknesses, etc., areas you want to change. And, so be thinking about the skill area, the skill you want to work on. And you'll be turning in that worksheet. And what else did I ask you for? I think there's one other thing I might have asked for. Oh, the stress. I think there's a stress assignment. All right, so I'm around. If you need anything, you have my phone number, text, and we'll look forward and check in with you next week. All right.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
All
you,
right.
everyone.
Awesome,
Night,
thank you.
everyone.